Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996 remains one of the most misunderstood yet profoundly consequential pieces of federal legislation ever enacted in the realm of public health and local governance. While the world has since changed dramatically, with wireless technologies becoming an integral, inescapable part of everyday life, Section 704 still shackles communities to safety guidelines stuck in the mid-1990s. It's not just that we've learned more in the past quarter century, it's that the science has fundamentally shifted. Today, we know that wireless radiation's biological impacts extend far beyond the simple question of heating tissues. Yet Section 704 effectively forbids local governments from saying no to cell towers based on these well-documented non-thermal health concerns. Instead, it enforces outdated FCC emission safety guidelines that were established when the internet was nascent and cell phones were still a novelty. Even a U.S. Court of Appeals decision acknowledged that the FCC and FDA failed to provide sound evidence to support thermal-only risk assessments. Yet Section 704 remains the gatekeeper, blocking any attempt to adapt policy to modern science. Back in the 1990s, the FCC's safety standards for wireless radiation were set with one narrow question in mind: does it heat human tissue? If not, it was presumed harmless. For its time, this logic may have seemed reasonable. Fast forward to the present, and a wealth of research shows that non-thermal biological effects are not only real, but potentially more significant than the thermal effects the guidelines were designed to prevent. Studies have revealed how radio frequency, RF emissions can induce oxidative stress, alter neurotransmitter levels, disrupt voltage-gated calcium channels, and influence hormonal pathways. These mechanisms operate at power levels far below what's needed to cause heating. Yet the FCC's standards, unchanged since the Clinton administration, ignore these non-thermal phenomena. This is like evaluating the safety of cigarettes by only considering whether they burn your tongue, ignoring the complex chemical and carcinogenic effects that occur without any burning sensation. In a recent landmark ruling, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit found the FCC's refusal to update its guidelines arbitrary and capricious. The court pointed out that the FCC and the FDA could not produce evidence to justify their thermal-only approach. Essentially, a federal court recognized what scientists and health advocates have been saying for years. The agencies relied on outdated assumptions and did not adequately address the mounting evidence of non-thermal risks. This court decision should have been the trigger for immediate policy reforms, but Section 704 stands in the way. Because of Section 704, local authorities can't use this new scientific understanding to push back against cell tower placements on health grounds. Even with court acknowledgement that the official stance lacks credibility, communities remain powerless. America's federalist system thrives on checks and balances, not just among branches of government, but also among levels of government. States and localities traditionally retain the authority to protect public health within their jurisdictions. Section 704, however, strips this essential right away. It instructs municipalities that they may not reject cell towers based on the environmental effects of RF emissions, as long as the facilities meet the FCC's outdated guidelines. This is more than a technical legal issue. It's a moral and constitutional affront. Communities are being forced to accept wireless infrastructure deployments without meaningful input, even when the science suggests these deployments could come with risks that the original FCC rules never considered. The greatest tragedy of Section 704's stranglehold on local authority is its impact on our children. Children are uniquely vulnerable to environmental toxins and stressors, including electromagnetic fields. Their developing brains and bodies are more susceptible to subtle changes in cellular signaling, oxidative stress, and hormonal imbalances. Parents who fear that a cell tower near a school could pose non-thermal risks have no legal recourse to demand safer alternatives. Instead of proactively safeguarding our future generations, Section 704 compels local governments to stand down. The communities that want to exercise their God-given right to protect children are told no by a distant federal law. This defies common sense, scientific progress, and the principle of local self-governance that America was built upon. We are at a crossroads. The science no longer supports the thermal-only model that Section 704 enforces. The courts have called out the FCC and FDA for failing to provide evidence supporting these antiquated guidelines. Public awareness of non-thermal EMF effects, autism, ADHD, hormone disruptions, even the erosion of empathy, continues to grow. The time is now to bring our policies into alignment with current knowledge. Repeal or amend Section 704. Without changing this law, local communities remain helpless. Amending it would restore their right to consider health factors and push for non-thermal safety standards, giving states and municipalities a fighting chance to protect their residents. Update FCC guidelines. The FCC must scrap its 25-year-old thermal-only model and adopt guidelines reflecting non-thermal effects. Independent peer-reviewed science should inform these new standards. Moral and constitutional realignment. Removing Section 704's constraints reaffirms the constitutional principle that localities have a say in matters affecting public health. It's not just about technology. It's about restoring democratic principles and ensuring that corporate interests do not overshadow community well-being. Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act, conceived in an era of far less understanding about EMFs, has outlived its scientific validity. By reinforcing outdated thermal-only safety guidelines and denying local governments the right to act on modern science, this law endangers the health and development of our children and communities. We must recognize that what was deemed safe in 1996 no longer holds up under scrutiny. The public must understand the grave miscalculation that Section 704 represents, a miscalculation that has allowed corporations to prioritize profit over human health, while stripping states and localities of their God-given right to protect their people. Fixing this starts with dismantling Section 704. It means demanding updated guidelines and independent research that reflect our current understanding of EMFs. Above all, it's about restoring the voice of the American people and ensuring that our children grow up in an environment shaped by informed choice, not enforced ignorance. Visit RF Safe to learn more.